Good day and welcome to GoGiro's webinar titled On the Pandemic's Remodeling of the Hospitality Industry in Slovenia. The topic at hand is one of the most important contemporary discussions in hospitality and as such deserves our unfiltered attention. Whether it's Thailand, Spain or Slovenia, the entire world has been crippled by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Tourism has absorbed a significant chunk of its effects, and Slovenia is no exception. To properly, as the topic demands, discuss the pandemic as it relates to Slovenia's hospitality industry, we have organized this public webinar. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our esteemed panelists. With us today are Dr. Tanja Angleitner-Sagadin, Director of Vocational College of Hospitality and Tourism Maribor, Blaž Zver, Head of Reception at Union Hotel, Dejan Ristic, Tourism Infrastructure Development Coordinator at Ljubljana Tourism, and Klemen Furlan, Director at Gojira. On behalf of us at Gojira and on behalf of the audience, I would like to thank you for taking your precious time in order to help us better understand this greatly important topic. Okay, the webinar is going to be structured as follows. We will start off with a roundtable, setting discussion between panelists, tackling some questions related to the theme of the webinar and to each panelist's particular expertise. We will then follow with some concluding thoughts and with a Q&A in which the audience can likewise ask questions to the panelists. Okay, so to kick off this roundtable, I would like to ask quite an elementary question to all of you panelists, but a question of great complexity nonetheless. In your opinion, what type of processes has the COVID-19 pandemic put into motion in relation to the hospitality industry or tourism? Talk about your viewpoints, experiences of the organization you represent, your personal observations, etc. Are those processes and are those processes bad? Are they exclusively bad? Are they good? Or are they ambivalent? Like in that sort of spirit. So I'd like to start off perhaps with you, Mr. Zver, considering you are below me on the Zoom. What is your perspective?
Hi everyone. First of all, thanks for having me here. It's a great pleasure. So yeah, COVID-19 has changed the tourism quite a bit. What we are noticing is that basically everything is happening last minute. There is no more planning ahead. People are uncertain about the situation. They don't know what will happen in the few days. So almost every day we saw some changes. So they don't plan ahead and they make reservations last minute. And you have to be quite flexible now with all of this. It's not easy to plan the workforce, everything. So this is the biggest challenge that, my opinion is, this is the biggest challenge for all the hotels here in Slovenia. There was a closing of the hotels also, which forced a lot of, not just the hotels, but all the companies to let go a lot of people. So it's hard to find now people to work. There were some, of course, cutting costs and everything because of the closing. There were no profits, nothing, no revenue. So it's quite challenging. But yeah, we try to do our best in this situation. So everyone is trying to do their own thing. And this is it. This is what we have. So I think we have to start thinking that this is the new way of tourism, new way of working in tourism. So we'll see what the future will bring. Okay, I'm quite optimistic. This is a new opportunities also. So we'll see.
So of all of negatives, there's at least some positive light. Perhaps there is some like rebirth potential through that pandemic.
Of course, there is always some new opportunities. In every crisis, there are opportunities. So now it just depends how fast you are, how smart you are. If you can think out of the box, that's it. So,
but like nothing specific, perhaps positive, you think hasn't happened to specifically, I don't know, the hotel industry in regards to the COVID pandemic, or is it just negative? Is there any positivity that came
Yeah,
out
it's
of it?
hard to find something positive. Maybe the positive thing is that we are forced now to think different ways, to think about some new things, new ways of doing tourism, new ways of attracting guests. So this is maybe good. Okay, but
Okay.
otherwise, yeah, it was a lot of bad things also. So closing of the hotels, letting go of people. So yeah.
I get it. Okay, thank you, Mr. Zver. Perhaps you, Mr. Ristic, what is your take on this very polemic discussion, the polemic question?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. So tourism has changed, not just the tourism, it's changed our everyday life, and it's been for 2 years with us, and we have to adapt and constantly. And tourism as one of the sectors that was hit the hardest. But like Mr. Zver said, it's not only the negatives. It's much. There were so many positive sides that came out of. So if it will give us time to rethink tourism, to think the different ways that we had to go, as we were seeing some negative sides of tourism and over tourism in 2019, not at our destination per se, but worldwide. And it gave us time to stop, to think about it. It gave us opportunity to go further with digitalization. A lot of digitalization as well in hotels, private and public sector happened that would take 10 years or 15 years in the regular time. Now it happened in 1 or 2 years. And then sustainability, it became so much more important, and health and safety and so other protocols that changed the tourism for tomorrow. And yeah, it gave much more opportunity to people outside of the tourism sector, to different areas with creative industries, IT sector to combine with tourism, creating new job opportunities. While it was definitely a bit harder to retain quality staff members, and like Mr. Zver said, that was one of the negative sides. And thinking about the borders, that you now have to think how to cross the border, how to think in further, when it was just given to us, maybe in United European Union, the most, just traveling without borders and passports. Now you have to think what kind of PCR certificates you need to have with you. But definitely a great time to rethink and change the tourism for tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ristic. I would just like to mention, by the way, that everybody who has a question for the panelists can post it in the chat. We will review it and ask it probably. We will review it and filter it and ask some of those in the Q&A section. But yeah, let's move on. So thank you, Mr. Ristic. Mrs. Sagadin, what is your perspective? What is your opinion on the question posed?
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this panel. I today represent the educational sector, and for all the participants who are not really closely linked to it, I would like to start off with a few numbers, just to give you an idea of what's happening and how does our, let's say, product also influence what my predecessor said, Blaž and the colleague from Ljubljana Tourism. 3 years ago, before Corona started, there was an intake of about 950 pupils into the first years of vocational schools, Srednja škola. We had an intake of about 450 to 500 students into vocational colleges. And now in these 2 years of being in lockdown, being limited in whatever we can do, this has very heavily influenced also vocational colleges. There are 8 vocational colleges in Slovenia, and we've seen a drop of about 35% in the last 2 years in terms of enrollment into the first year. So that is a very striking number and striking data, because at the end, what we produce, our graduates then go into the industry and need to find jobs in hotels, in tourism offices, destination management organizations, etc. And if we don't produce enough staff, then of course the whole industry suffers. So the first drawback was probably because of that. And I think it's partly because of the fact that high school kids need to decide at the beginning of March what they want to study. And if at the beginning of March, the situation shows that we're in a lockdown, hotels are closed, restaurants are closed, tourism is limited, then of course there will probably be parents saying, listen, you should not really go into hospitality at the moment because everything is closed, so perhaps there is no potential. We still represent the opinion that there is a lot of potential and that we will need a lot of good, skilled, and prepared and educated young people to help set up or help with the rebirth of tourism after this whole COVID situation is over. So in the last 2 years, we had a lot of changes in the educational world. Now, vocational college programs last 2 years. So in 2 years, we need to give all the skills, all the knowledge, and especially the professional aspect to our students. And if we think back, the first lockdown came in March 2020. We were locked down for 10 weeks. Then we were able to get students back to school for 2 weeks, no, 2.5 months. We were in lockdown. We got students back for 2 weeks, started off the new year in October, went hybrid after week 1, went into lockdown after week 2, and then we were in a lockdown for 4 months. So we're talking about a whole generation of students who was actually very disadvantaged because they could not follow the regular process. And for us educators, the biggest shock, if I can say or call it that, was in March, when on Friday we found out that on Monday next week we'll go into lockdown. So we had to restructure our educational approach, going from completely live into completely online. Now, to give you an idea, the vocational college programs are about half of the content is of practical nature. This means specialized classrooms, this means laboratories, this means one-on-one work, small groups, 10 people, 15 people, and all of that fell away because people were learning from the couch. And that was year 1, and that was year 2. We're still in the process, and we still haven't managed to get all of the skills back in place. So for educators, this change required greater flexibility, kind of a hybrid approach. We still want to transfer the applicable knowledge, but it's difficult. You know, you cannot just watch a MasterChef show and know how to cook perfectly. I think in a lot of these areas that are linked to the culinary skills, you need to do work, taste, smell, just, you know, grab things, do this with a mentor in a classroom with a lot of exchange, and that's something that cannot be done online. And in addition to that, students have to also do 400 hours of practical training in the industry, and if we don't prepare them, we don't send them out skilled and prepared for everyday business, then of course the hospitality industry doesn't like that too much. So one of the biggest challenges for us was to move into the digital environment and still try to keep a certain level of standard and quality of the education that we need to transmit to these students. So yeah, that I would say was the biggest concern, the biggest challenge we had in schools.
Okay, one quick follow-up perhaps for the initial point you made was that there's a big deficit in enrollment in regards to students. Do you feel like that deficit is going to be prolonged into the post-COVID world, or do you feel like it's going to be resolved after COVID is resolved, or how do you feel we solve it if it's not resolved? Just a quick reply to that.
Well, I hope that the numbers go up again. Now, I have to say that in September 22, we are expecting the generation born in the year 2003. And demographically speaking, in Slovenia, in the last 30 years, the worst generation that was born in terms of numbers was the generation 2003. We're talking about 1,000 people less than in 2004, and 2004 had, or 2002, and 2002 had 1,500 people less than the year before. So we are looking at demographic factors that are not in favor, but at the same time, because we're keeping the hospitality open, hotels are open, even though it's limited, people can kind of travel, even though they need to have the certificate of recovery or having a booster jab. But things are changing, and I hope that young people have seen that there are possibilities, that all of these obstacles and challenges but we had to overcome, give us the playground for new ideas, for, as Bosch put it, thinking out of the box, just creating new solutions and finding out things that perhaps before didn't exist. So we are hoping to keep at least the same number that we had last year. That would be great already. And that slowly people will again win confidence to travel, win confidence into the hospitality profession and decide to go back into this business. There will be a lot of opportunities and basically every hand is welcome. So we really hope that things will change and into a more positive way.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mrs. Sagadin. Now I'd like to turn to Mr. Furlan and hear his opinion, his viewpoint on the initial question.
Yeah, we as something new that is coming to the market. So basically, GoGiro is a non-room hospitality application which helps especially the hotels, city hotels, is one thing that is maybe a child of this situation. So what we are trying to do is to digitalize digital tour guides. And basically, I think if the situation wouldn't be, so basically, especially in city hotels, Ljubljana and Maribor, actually feel the crisis of COVID-19 the most of all the tourism in our country, in Slovenia. If that wouldn't happen, we wouldn't be as successful with onboarding very important hotels and working together with Visit Ljubljana with digital tour guides. Basically, I think in a way it helped us to actually give an idea to hotels to actually work with us, to try something new, to take care of guests even when they're outside of their rooms. So I think in a way that was a chance for us. Of course, tourists weren't in big numbers, but we managed to make a big impact in this summer, and we are proud to work with most of the significant hotels in Ljubljana. And I think if that situation wouldn't happen with COVID-19, we for sure wouldn't be as interesting a partner as we are right now. So we can talk about a chance that was given to us, and we took advantage of it. In regards to personnel, I think with digitalization and more extensive usage of digital tools for hotels like property management systems and our digital tour guide, they can also go in. So with less personnel, they can still manage that their ordinary business. So usage of that tools can be a solution for less personnel available. On the other hand, with scholars, we think that giving scholars more technological education and educating them more into social media platforms and digital platforms would, of course, make them even more interesting to existing hotels. One profession that is currently opening up with our type of business is actually destination manager, who is a person that helps visitors to create experiences during their stay. And that is, of course, I think one of the future professions that at this moment might not even exist or is in very small numbers and will in future be quite significant profession.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Furlan. Okay, let's move to the next section actually. So you all mentioned a couple of things, some opportunities, some drawbacks that came out of this pandemic. I want to discuss the role of the Slovene government in handling the pandemic in relation to tourism. So let's start with you, Dr. Sagadin. Considering you're an active academic observer with long-time expertise in hospitality, in all the chaos, what was done right, what was wrong, and what should be done in the future to mitigate this crisis and to capitalize on the opportunities it offers in hospitality and tourism? What is your opinion?
Oof, challenging one. Okay. On one hand, we fall directly under the Ministry of Education, and they give us guidelines as to how we carry out the academic process, the teaching process. The relationship's not been optimal, it's not been perfect, but at least this year we gladly were offered the possibility to carry out activities live, at least for exercises and lab work, and to have the chance to do lectures online. So that would be the teaching aspect of the approach of, let's say, government guidance or governance. On the other hand, what was shown in the last year was that in the summer, skilled professional staff was really completely sought after, and we have a lot of practical training. So the industry asked us constantly, there were daily calls from numerous businesses, can you please send us 10 people, 15 people, can we have them for a month, 2, 3, or 4? So that was very, very challenging because in the first round, I think it was Blush who mentioned that a lot of people were either laid off or had to find jobs in other businesses, and we will never get them back. So one of the challenges is to have enough skilled young professionals who are willing to do that. However, what we did see in the summer was that these young people were able to set prices very, very high for their services, being it student work, being it like regular employment situations. And in order to really boost the profession, I think we would first of all have to raise salaries, because we know that working in hospitality to the most part still means working for a little bit over a minimum wage. And unless the government solves this issue and raises the salaries, it will be very, very difficult to get back to what we, or at least what Slovenia has been promoting itself as 5-star boutique experience, something with a lot of added value for guests who know what they're looking for, something extraordinary, something of real high quality. And at the moment, I believe we don't have enough skilled staff to support these services and to really provide that 5-star boutique experience. And that, I believe, is not only in the hands of educators, but is also partly in the hands of the government, which can again only be solved with the raise of salaries. COVID situation showed us that if you have a lot of imagination or innovative and creative, you can find your way around it, and you can find your way in the hospitality sector through different projects, different perhaps applications, or a different way of doing business. And I'm glad to see so many young people really trying to embark on this new journey that nobody's tried before. So there is a lot of potential in Slovenia. We just need to make sure that they stay here, develop their ideas, and help us rebuild the hospitality industry.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sagadin. Mr. Ristic, as a representative of Visit Ljubljana, how would you elaborate on Dr. Sagadin's points? What has been your experience or the experience of Visit Ljubljana vis-a-vis the government?
So like Tanya pointed out, it all starts with skilled staff and maintaining it and creating new job opportunities with added value, not just for minimum wages or something just slightly above minimum wages. Also, it is the key point I would like to point with the effect of the COVID. It is the loss of really quality young professionals, changed the sphere of their work, changed the sector, probably not return back. And large part of that is salary and working environment. It is so. It maybe Blaž will tell you the best about it, because hotel sector and restaurants were mostly hit by the pandemics and the loss of staff and staff changes and so on. But from our point and our vis-a-vis connections with the government, we tried to point it out and work connectedly with the government and throughout the various work groups, various crisis groups, and our managing director Petra Stušek was very active during the COVID times and still is. So it was all about working together with our private partners, with our public partners and the government, trying to find the common language. Maybe on some points we didn't find it, but yeah, we'll keep on doing that in order to provide the best for our partners and stakeholders of the tourism.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ristic. Mr. Zver, the hotel industry, as Mr. Ristic rightly pointed, was particularly hit after the wake of the COVID pandemic. What insights do you have in relation to the government's handling of the crisis?
Yeah, I agree. Hotels were hit the most, probably. I think that government did what they thought it's best to do. The only thing that I think was wrong was the communication with the rest of us, because there was a lot of uncertainty. No one really knows. We didn't know if the government will help or not help with the staff and so on. So during the lockdown, of course, every company did what they had to do to survive. So let go of the people to lower the costs. If this would be more clearly communicated from the government that they will help with that, maybe not so many people will lost their jobs. But yeah, now we are where we are. And as the colleagues already said, there is a big problem with the workforce here in the tourism. There is not a lot of educated people who stayed in the tourism. As Dr. Sagarin said, there is 35% less students in schools for tourism. So I don't know what will future bring with all these numbers, but we'll see. I think that the people who stayed in the industry, they didn't stay because of salaries. Salaries are what they are, but there is something else that drives them, that keeps them here. So these are the right people for the job, just there is not enough of them. So we need to do everything what we can to keep them and to try to bring new ones, so these people can teach the other who is coming in the industry. So, but we'll see what will the future bring. Won't be easy, but again, some new opportunities to learn, to grow, to see what we can do with what we have.
But as a representative, let's say, of the hotel industry in this discussion, this panel, what advice would you give the government, especially in relation to what you mentioned, like the drastic decrease in wages? How would you advise the government to actually help mitigate, solve, decrease, whatever, this gigantic problem that is in front of us? That is obviously the decrease of wages and the loss of jobs in the hospitality.
Oof, that's a very tough question. I really don't know what to do. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Somehow to try to get some people back to tourism. Increasing salaries could help. Yeah, not in long term, because salary is not enough. That's, we all know. It's we always want more, but at least for beginning, to try to attract new people to come to this industry. Yes, this probably would help. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zver. So lastly, Mr. Furlan, during the time of the pandemic, your company, GoGiro, has experimented with many ideas that seem to involve the government and its restrictions, ultimately settling with GoGiro Smart Tour Guide as an interesting and in-demand product despite all the circumstances. How did you handle restrictions, regulations, and how did you eventually come on top? And obviously, like you mentioned in your introduction, that the COVID actually helped you speed up your product? Will a different governmental approach even enhance your product, or are you content with the way things developed as they did?
Yeah, in regards to our product and governmental restrictions or regulations, our product as itself already takes into account this social distancing, since you can only drive on e-scooter or e-bike by yourself. So we, in the case of social distancing, had no problem. There were some issues with taking care of e-scooters to make them clean for next users. However, everything else was pretty much okay with regulations. Of course, the lockdown made Slovenia not really attractive for tourists during the pandemic. So of course we were hit in a way as any other hospitality business did. So there were no foreign tourists, which are of course one of the most important tourists for us. So we are looking forward for this year. Hopefully the tourism, especially foreigners, will pick up, and we will be able to have more tourists on our digital tour guides. In regards to how governmental approach would even help us more is, since we are digitalizing tourism and making tour guides available for smaller groups of people, or for people who are maybe less social to move in groups. And of course it's as social distancing has become a really important part of our lives. This actually makes makes knowing the city much easier for different smaller groups and COVID conscious groups available. So the digital tour guide, meaning so I can say in Ljubljana, together with Visit Ljubljana, we made 3 distinct tour guides which involve all the Plečnik monuments and connecting them together on a guided tour, digital tour, guided tour, and of course photo tour with the best things Ljubljana has to show, and very unique and special mosaic tours, which is one thing that Tourism Ljubljana is very proud of. So this way we can take as many tourists as is physically possible without an extra cost of tour guide. And of course, even destination management and tour guides can pick up on this business, because as our platform is open for all the good content, they can replicate their own physical guides to our platform. So I think government helping with initiatives to even fund this type of digitalization in tourism would help us immensely.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Furlan. So let's move on to the next section of this roundtable. So the next segment of the roundtable involves the reaction of the tourism and hospitality industry to the pandemic in Slovenia. And I would like to start with you, Mr. Zver. How do you evaluate the performance of the Slovene hotel industry when the effects of the pandemic started to affect hotels, and your hotel in particular? What is your personal experience? What is your observation? And do you think that the hotel industry adapted to its highest ability, or did it lack in some important aspects?
Yeah, so at the start of the pandemic, there was a lockdown, so there was not much to do at that time. But after that, I think that hotels had to shift focus a little bit. There were no more travels, everything was closed, border was closed and so on. So we have to shift focus from foreign tourists to the domestic tourists. And the hotels who were able to do that fast enough, they did well, the best they could probably. So that was the most important thing in that time, to shift focus to the locals, to the Slovenian tourists. So to try to attract them to come with the help of the government, with these touristic vouchers and so on. So there was something to do even in that times. Now the things are slowly changing again a little bit. There are foreign tourists that are coming. There is more and more flights. So we'll see what will happen.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Zver. Mr. Ristic, same question. How do you evaluate the reaction of hospitality and tourism industry to the pandemic, primarily through the lenses of Visit Ljubljana?
So the change was quite significant. A lot of change in the hospitality sector, and maybe at the first we were shocked. Everything stopped for a moment, and we didn't know where to head, left, right, up, down. And then, like Blaž said, we had to shift our focus to more domestic public, to local guests, to Slovenia. At Ljubljana Tourism, we did a research of the domestic market, as we didn't do it before. We focused on the domestic market also in the previous years, but not in that scale as we did in 2020, 2021, and now. And working with our partners, taking a look at all the hygienic and safety protocols, especially in hotels, also changing in the digitalization, trying to find new opportunities, with the digitalization of Place's heritage, and also working with Gojiro, creating a new tree products that take you on Place's tour or Invader tour, or just to see the most important and the best photo points in Ljubljana, creating new activities for the guests, not to travel in the groups, not trying to go on the guided tour like it was in 2019 with 20, 30, 40 guests, but going alone, discovering the hidden gems of Ljubljana. And the change happened not only in private, but also in public sector. But yeah, trying to find new partners that we didn't think about them maybe in 2019. So Gojira is a great example of working together, creating new opportunities, and the experiences that are interesting, not just for tourists, foreign tourists, but also for locals and the residents of Slovenia. So that was the main shift that we've seen in Ljubljana tourism.
Okay, I would like to ask both Mr. Zver and Mr. Ristic one very brief question with a brief answer. Like, if we compare the hospitality industry in Slovenia and their reaction to COVID and the reactions of other hospitality industry in other countries which were similarly affected as the whole globe was by the pandemic, how would you compare? Where do we stand? Did the hospitality industry in Slovenia adequately react to the pandemic, or in comparison to other countries? How do you evaluate in those parameters? Mr. Zver, perhaps first, and then quickly Mr. Ristic.
To be honest, I don't know what the situation in other countries is in hospitality industry, but for us, I can say for our company, I think we did quite good. We have a very good products. We have different hotels, different types. We have on one side Grand Hotel Union, new hotel with the tradition, renovated Hotel Leo with the modern style, Central Hotel with fuzzy lock, with tents on the roof, with capsules. So there is something for everyone here. So I think that we have a good future. We can be happy. But for the other countries, I'm not sure, to be honest. How did they manage it? So
okay.
So our job at Ljubljana Tourism is quite simple if the products are good. So if the hotels, accommodation, restaurants are working their job, it's easy for us to promote this destination as such. And we've seen also throughout the pandemic, the investments in hotels and private accommodations didn't stop. So at the first, closing for part-time or temporary, but the investments in hotel sectors, in 4-star or 5-star hotels continued. So it's a great sign for further development of the destination. And working with the other destinations, we are just so as a city destinations, we were hit quite hard with the COVID, but managing out with work with our partners, with the opening of the new airline connections with the world, that's helping quite a lot, bringing back the tourists from not just neighboring countries, but from further away.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zver, Mr. Ristic. Now I guess we need some academic expertise. So I'm going to turn to Dr. Sagadin. So what do you feel like? Where were Mr. Zver and Mr. Ristic off? Where were they right? How do you evaluate the reaction of the hospitality industry in Slovenia to the pandemic?
Okay, that might be a bit challenging question for me as representing the educational aspect. What I would like to respond to is Eva's question in chat. Eva was asking if there was...
Sorry. The Q&A section is going to be
later on. Okay.
We're going to be responding to those questions at the end. Right now.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Right,
since we can't really directly influence what's going on in the industry, what we're trying to do is, since our students have to do so much practical training, we keep a very good network of companies in Slovenia that we constantly work with, so that our students have an ongoing network of hotels, restaurants, and other organizations where they can do their practical training. So we were trying to get their feedback, working together with mentors, educating mentors. And in the meantime, in the last 2 years, there were quite a lot of projects that we were in at international level, and majority of them had as one of the outcomes some training materials for the industry, for the SMEs. So what we were trying to do is help out the industry to train the SMEs in particular, so companies and businesses that have less than 10 employees, to bring them up on a better level with some of the skills that they might lack, or some of the expertise they didn't have a chance to acquire during their work or during their studies. And I think with these webinars, training sessions, workshops, etc., we were trying to help reboost the hospitality industry, because the lockdown showed that people had a lot of time for educating and training themselves in a different way, in a different field. And I guess with this mixture of educational content, they will be able to better cope with the drawbacks that lockdowns brought us. Now, going back to the international connectivity through Ljubljana Airport, that will be challenging. Because at the moment, we don't have a lot of good connections that bring tourists. We have the regular airlines, Lufthansa connecting Frankfurt twice a day, Switzerland, which is a country of its own at the moment, having special entry criteria than the other countries. And I think that majority of the charter flights that flew in and out of Ljubljana Airport were actually meant for Slovenian tourists going to the Mediterranean. So I think a new model needs to be developed, and I'm glad to see that the Slovenian Travel Organization is working on a new strategy. And the same goes or applies to the situation in Maribor, Podravje region and Pohorje region. Now, we are also working on a new tourism development strategy for the next 5 years. It is at the moment in the hands of the Regional Development Agency, RRA Maribor Podravje, and Maribor Tourist Office is also heavily involved in that. So speaking about the city tourism, if Ljubljana was hit heavily, I think Maribor was hit even more, because there are not that many tourists who stop or who stopped in Maribor for just like overnight. We lost a lot of groups. Now, I myself used to be a local guide for many, many years. And for the last year and a half, there were hardly any groups in the city of Maribor. And if you just take a look around, hotels are half open, or perhaps open only for larger events, and then they close down. And we are talking about the major overnight houses that there are. And the only businesses that really have been working throughout lockdowns were family-owned hotels. And that's not something that can help at least Maribor area or Styria area to rebuild tourism in that sense. So I think it will take more than just a year to get back to anywhere near to the figures of 2019. Perhaps like an answer to the previous question, how did the vouchers help or not help? Now, we keep good contact with our alumni, and there are about 1,000 of them at the moment. So throughout the lockdowns, we were communicating with them. A lot of them work in the industry. A lot of them are mentors in the companies for our students to their practical training. And we received quite a lot of feedback from them saying that the voucher system actually wasn't beneficial to the tourism in terms of keeping or maintaining the quality. It helped because people spent the night, people spent their vacation in Slovenia, but in terms of quality, service, and everything else, I think it dropped us even further down on this qualitative level, and it will take a while to get back to something. But at the same time, I think it brought a lot of potential to the less developed areas, rural tourism, agro-tourism, tourist farms, and everything that's in the green environment. So we moved into outdoor adventure and things like that that before perhaps were not so popular but are growing in importance. And if I take a look at Maribor and nearest vicinity, so we're talking about 30 kilometers around, so all the way to, I don't know, Cerkvenjak on one hand, Dravi on the other side. There are so many new small privately owned glampings, tourist farms that have an additional wellness well-being offer. People putting in swimming pools, jacuzzi, saunas, and everything to just increase and improve their offer. And I think they were the real winners of the COVID situation. And hopefully people who discovered, or Slovenian tourists who discovered these hidden gems, will keep on discovering them in the future as well, a little bit to help them maintain all of the investments that they put into development in the past year and a half.
Thank you very much. Great insights, Dr. Sagadin. So lastly, again, Mr. Furlan, perhaps a little bit briefly, as a product that emerged, as a product that emerged during the pandemic, you seem to be a positive story of this crisis. Where has the hospitality industry gone bad when you have gone right?
Basically, I think every crisis makes is an option to evolve into something better. So when you are trying to do different things, you can always come out with some improvements, and I think from every crisis there is a potential to improve our hospitality. And during these times, as I said, hotels and destination managements were more willing to speak with us with a product that might not have been interesting to them before the COVID. So of course, it was a big challenge for hospitality during COVID times, and it made them reconsider the traditional approaches and made them more open to maybe ideas that haven't been tried before. From one thing that we heard this week, and we find it really amazing, is that Hotel Slon decided to give all guests that will come in 2022 a free digital tour guide for Plečnik monuments. So it's a Plečnik tour. As this year it's a Plečnik year, they have decided to really make a contribution to honor this this year with free digital tour guide for all guests. So this is a big acknowledgement for us, that a hotel believes in our product so much that they want to actually finance it to all the guests that will arrive in 2022. So I think if COVID wouldn't happen, we wouldn't be there and available as a mass product to all the visitors. Hopefully, other hotels will have similar ideas. Other hotels will be able, together with Visit Ljubljana, to create even better, more involving digital tour guides. One thing that I have to mention is that together with Visit Ljubljana, we are creating an augmented reality tour of Plečnik. So basically, it hasn't been discussed in details, but in basic terms, visitors will be able to see through the phone buildings that Plečnik might want to build, but however they weren't built. So it will be a mixture of augmented reality and of real places, and we are really looking forward to this project to do with Tourism Ljubljana, which is really a unique project. So I think this without the crisis wouldn't be as fast as that. And as we are a digital company, we aim to bring such success as we had with Visit Ljubljana and hotels in Ljubljana to other major European tourist cities, which don't have this type of solution and have pretty much similar problems than hotels in Ljubljana, city hotels in Ljubljana had.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Furlan. Thank you to all the panelists. This concludes the roundtable part of the webinar. I guess we can conclude from the roundtable that there are a great many challenges facing Slovenia in general and our hospitality industry. And also there are some opportunities that we could capitalize on in the future, perhaps. And now I would like to open the Q&A section. The audience and other guests are, as before, free to ask questions to any of the panelists. We will ask the first question that was from Mr. Gorenc to Mr. Zver. So what impact do you think that the government made by announcing vouchers, Bon and Vajset for tourism? What is your take?
What impact did they make?
What impact did those vouchers make?
Yeah, the impact was that hotels were basically, you have to shift the focus to the Slovenian tourists. You have to adapt the offer that you have to different kind of tourists, let's say, to the local tourists. I don't know, maybe from one side it helped hotels to at least get some guests. On the other side, as Dr. Sagadin said, also the service might fall a little bit because of that, yeah. Not just because of that, but because you have the hotels were forced to let a lot of people go. So all the hotels are short-staffed, I guess, and there was quite a lot of people with these vouchers that came, and of course the service couldn't be at that level that it should be. So yeah, this is probably the thing that they did. It was some good things, but also not everything. So yeah.
Okay. So a lot of ambivalence, let's say, in the vouchers. Thank you, Mr. Zver. From Mr. Filipic to Mrs. Sagadin, do you think more students would decide for tourism studies if an organization would offer education plus employment similar systems as Slovenian Police Academy to receive a wage and be enrolled on the university at the same time? What is your perspective?
Well, first of all, if they receive a wage and are still enrolled, that is, I think, a legislative question, if this is even possible, because the police academy does not fall under the same laws that govern vocational colleges and universities. On the other hand, we've been really closely monitoring what our alumni do. And normally in the last 5-6 years, they change their professions every 2 years. So the idea that the company has when giving out a scholarship is to have this person do all the practical training, compulsory and non-compulsory, in their house. And once the student graduates, there should be a binding contract for this person to work in this company for at least 3 to 5 years, or otherwise it doesn't make sense to give them a scholarship. And what we've noticed is that the young generation of today does not want to be tied up, and receiving this scholarship would mean that they would not be able to freely move around. So we've had these discussions with some of the employers, thinking about the scholarship schemes at the whole Slovenian level, but the response was not really the way Eva wants to have it. And at least in the hospitality industry, I think that a lot of young students don't really want that. There was another issue or another question, if I just might answer at the same time, because it was also linked to studying and international career of students. Despite the lockdowns and limitations in the last year, so in the summer of 2021, there were 34 students of our Vocational College of Hospitality and Tourism, Maribor, who went abroad for practical training, 2 or 3 months. So 34 Erasmus mobility stipends were used for that. We had 2 students coming to Slovenia to study. We had 2 students coming to Slovenia through Erasmus exchange to work in our school restaurant 7. And we had 6 teaching staff who came to Slovenia on Erasmus exchange for training, job shadowing, and carrying out workshops, culinary workshops. Plus we had 20 staff, teaching staff, and other administrative staff who went abroad for Erasmus mobility stipends in the last year. So despite the limitations, we were able to make most out of it. And when it comes to students, those who aspire an international career will find their way out. And they might not know this in the first semester of year 1, but it's highly unlikely to have students tied down with a stipend or a scholarship provided from the hotel. So I would have to say probably not.
Okay, thank you. So before we go on, I'd just like to say one more time, emphasize one more time, this is the last opportunity to pose questions. So if you have any extra questions, feel free to write them in the chat and we will address them. So, okay, so from Mrs. Rao, a student of the Faculty of Tourism in Brežice, to Mr. Zver. So she has 2 questions. First question, how did you manage to market your hotel on social media during this time? So let's first tackle this first question and then let's move on to the second one.
Oh, this is more a question for our marketing team, but I believe normal channels like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. So probably through that channels mostly.
Was it anything special challenges or special opportunities or any specialities during the COVID pandemic in relation to the social media marketing sphere, if you have any insights?
For social media, I'm not the right person to answer the question, but for the 5-star experience, to be honest, you must have service for 5-star. Service is what makes the 5-star experience. And marketing is one thing. You have to bring the guests to the hotel, but then you have to provide the 5-star service. And this is what people do in the hotel. Everyone who is in the hotel provides that service. And it is quite a challenge now in these times because there is not a lot of interactions anymore. Everything is touchless. You have to wear masks. You cannot smile. I mean, you can smile, but the people cannot see that you're smiling, and it's not that easy. So we try to do our best to I don't know, somehow with all these regulations still provide a service that the guests feels welcomed and appreciated and so on. This is what makes the 5-star experience in the hotels. So it is quite challenging now, but I think we are doing a good job. We have very good people working here, so passionate people. So I think we are managing quite well.
Okay, so basically the second question is quite similar to what you just answered. I'll read it out, and if you have any other thoughts, you can just add them. So if you have any 5-star experience in your hotel for your guests, how did you manage to market that on social media, and which platforms did you use for that, and who exactly did you target the most? So perhaps the last part of the question is the one you haven't.
Yeah, as I said, for the marketing, I'm not really the right person. We have a marketing team here who is doing a great job. I think they are using the normal channels, as I said, Facebook. I know there are a lot of posts and LinkedIn, Instagram, and so on. So their job is to post it. Then our job is to provide that service that we are posting it there. So we are in good cooperation with everything. So I think.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zver. So now from Mr. Zadravec to Mr. Furlan. What is your and your company's plan for the next 5 years? Where do you see your company after 5 years? So let's say 2027.
Yeah, so we would like to replicate what we have done in Ljubljana in major European tourist cities. So we would like to work with destination agencies similar to Visit Ljubljana in 30 of largest European tourist cities, have a great connection between hotels and destination agencies, and have lots and lots of interesting custom-made digital tour guides. And be connected with hotels' property management systems, be connected with local micromobility providers, and have a network of non-room revenue tourism with amazing experiences that will actually make guests from city hotels happier, and not only increase the revenue from hotel, but also make guests more satisfied with the service from hotel.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Furlan. I guess that concludes the Q&A section of the discussion. In case somebody has any extra questions in typing, we can have a couple more seconds. If not, I will have to conclude this Q&A session. So yeah, in conclusion, I'd like to give thanks to the panelists for your time. I would like to give thanks to the audience and guests as well for taking a part of this in this lively discussion. And lastly, I would like to thank the GoGiro team, which organized and produced this event. It has surely been a very engaging and informative discussion, and we hope for more of those in the future. For now, let's try to digest what we have heard, process it, and use that to come up with better solutions for tourism and hospitality in the age of the COVID pandemic. Thank you again, and until next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, goodbye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.